13-year-old Amy McNeal had her whole life ahead of her until the day everything changed. On her way to school, she was suddenly abducted, and her future became terrifyingly uncertain. Her parents, filled with fear, wasted no time. They immediately contacted the FBI, desperate for help. Their only hope was that the agents, working alongside local law enforcement, could locate Amy before anything terrible happened to her. Wealth can certainly make life more comfortable, but it also brings risks, and kidnapping is one of the scariest of them all. There's hardly anything more devastating for a family than the disappearance of a child. I'm Jim Carlst, says a former director of the FBI's New York field office. Kidnapping cases are among the most complex and demanding. They often require undercover work and the ability to respond at a moment's notice. Roughly 30 kilometers south of Fort Worth, Texas, lies the quiet town of Alvarado, nestled in rural Johnson County. For the area's more affluent residents, it's a peaceful escape from the noise of big cities. Among those residents are the McNeals, a well-known and respected family in the community. It was Friday, January 15, 1985. The McNeal family began their day like any other, sharing breakfast around the table. Amy's older brother planned to drive her to school, and on the way, they would pick up their cousin, who lived in another house on the family's property. Around 7:05 a.m., the kids hit the road. But without warning, a car shot out from behind a parked pickup truck, a dark-colored sedan that suddenly blocked the path of their Jeep. A man with a gun jumped out, marched up to their vehicle, and shouted, "Get out, girl!" He ordered Amy to get into his car. The man, who had blonde hair and carried a weapon, warned her brother not to contact the police. He claimed he would be in touch with their family soon. Instinctively, Amy's brother tried to intervene, but the kidnapper snapped, "Stay out of this, boy," and threatened to kill both him and Amy if he dared to follow. In a flash, they sped off with Amy. The boys couldn't see the license plate. The whole thing was over in seconds. They raced home and told their parents everything, repeating the warning not to involve law enforcement. But Amy's father wasn't about to take orders from criminals. He picked up the phone and called the FBI's Fort Worth office right away. FBI Special Agent Clint Brown, a seasoned agent with 30 years of experience, knew the clock was ticking. "In cases like this, every single second counts," he said. "I've worked many kidnappings, and the goal is always the same: bring the victim home safely. Everything we do revolves around that." The FBI quickly set up a tape recorder on the McNeal's home phone, hoping to catch any clues about the caller or their location. They also alerted the phone company, instructing them to monitor all incoming calls. Agents coached Amy's father on how to handle the anticipated ransom call. He was told to demand proof that Amy was still alive. They expected the call to come soon. Meanwhile, Johnson County Sheriff Eddie Box was alarmed by something odd. The kidnappers hadn't bothered to wear masks. They showed their faces. "No attempt to hide their identities," he said. "That's a red flag. It usually means they don't plan to leave any witnesses." To help identify the suspect, investigators worked with Amy's brother and cousin to create a composite sketch of the armed man. Neither teen had seen him before, but they described his blonde hair and the vehicle used in the abduction. Criminals like this, authorities noted, often aren't very strategic. Many times, their thinking is clouded by drug use. They need money for drugs, so they turn to desperate, dangerous acts like kidnapping, often without a solid plan. Just after 10 a.m., over 2 hours since Amy was taken, the phone finally rang. A man's voice came through. "I have your daughter." He demanded $100,000, half in large bills, half in smaller denominations. No sequentially numbered bills, he warned. Amy's father asked to speak with her, but the kidnapper refused. He assured the family she was still alive and that they'd be allowed to talk to her when he called back with instructions on where to bring the money. Before hanging up, he made one more threat. If the FBI got involved, they'd never see Amy again. The call lasted less than a minute, far too short to trace in 1985. Agents replayed the recording, hoping to pick up any background sounds that might reveal the caller's location. They noticed street noise and wind, suggesting the call was made from a public phone booth. The voice didn't match anyone the McNeals recognized. Although the McNeals had money, Amy's father couldn't just pull $100,000 in cash out of nowhere. Most of his wealth was tied up in business assets. He started making urgent calls to his partners, asking them to gather whatever cash they could and send it by private charter flights. The next incoming call wasn't what the authorities had been hoping for. Instead, the local media had caught wind of the kidnapping, most likely tipped off by nearby residents. Reporters were already reaching out, pushing for information, and looking to get the story on air as soon as possible. Sheriff Eddie Box quickly realized how dangerous this development was. If the kidnappers found out their crime had made the news, they might panic. Or worse, harm Amy before any ransom handoff could be arranged. The FBI and local law enforcement held an emergency strategy session. They needed to keep the situation under wraps. A lead deputy was tasked with bringing in the reporters, checking their credentials, and contacting senior producers at their respective news outlets. The message to media was clear. If you run this story now, you could be putting a young girl's life in danger. Fortunately, every local news outlet agreed to hold off on publishing anything until the sheriff gave them the go-ahead. That bought the team a little more time. Just before 1 p.m., the phone rang again. "I have your daughter," said the same male voice. This time, a second FBI agent was silently coordinating with the phone company over a separate line. As soon as the call came in, the phone company began tracing it. Amy's father again pleaded to speak with her. This time, the kidnapper agreed. When Amy came on the line, her voice was shaking. Her eyes were blindfolded, and she was clearly terrified. But hearing her voice gave her father a glimmer of hope. Despite being afraid himself, he gently told her everything was going to be okay. The moment was brief. The kidnapper quickly took back the phone and told Mr. McNeal that he still didn't know exactly where the ransom exchange would take place. He promised to call back soon. Texas Ranger Bill Gunn, who was listening in, was deeply moved by the call. It was emotional, he said. She was scared, and of course, her dad was too, but he did his best to keep her calm and strong. Everyone anxiously waited for news from the phone company. Unfortunately, the call was once again too short, and since it came from outside the provider's network coverage area, the trace was inconclusive. All they could confirm was that the call originated somewhere north of the McNeal's property, about 40 kilometers away. Amy was likely still in Texas, somewhere near Fort Worth, but without a precise location, the search couldn't advance. "At that point, we had no real leads," said one agent. "Just a vague area and a description of the kidnapper's vehicle. Still, that was something." Deputies from Johnson County fanned out in a wide 50-kilometer radius, combing through farms, houses, and side road from Alvarado to Kennedale, hoping to spot the vehicle used in the abduction. They also shared the vehicle description with nearby law enforcement agencies. But with no license plate to go on, tracking down a single car in that widened area felt nearly impossible. Back at the McNeal's home, a group of Mr. McNeal's friends from across Texas and Arkansas arrived with bundles of cash, enough to meet the kidnappers' $100,000 demand. It had taken nearly 6 hours since the abduction to gather that much money. Texas Rangers escorted the group to a local bank, where the cash was carefully prepared for the drop. Ranger Sergeant John Dandy helped with the packaging process. They had a tough time pulling together that much cash on such short notice, he recalled. But once we had it, we sealed it up in clean plastic bags. No fingerprints allowed. They followed every protocol. Latex gloves, photocopies of each bill, serial numbers recorded. Now, all they needed was a location from the kidnappers. Later that afternoon, deputies located a vehicle matching the description given by Amy's brother and cousin. It was parked about 30 kilometers from the McNeal's home. A quick check revealed it had been stolen just a day before from a city roughly 80 kilometers east of Alvarado, a town called Mesquite. There was no sign of Amy inside, but investigators impounded the vehicle and searched the surrounding area for witnesses who might have seen the driver. Back at the Johnson County Sheriff's Department, FBI agents swept the car for evidence. They lifted several fingerprints from the interior, but without suspects to match them to, they were at a dead end. By 11:30 that night, 16 hours after the abduction, 3 more calls had come in. Still, The kidnappers had not named a place to exchange the ransom. Agents held on to hope that the next call would finally lead to Amy's release. When the phone rang again, it was the same man. The phone company began another trace. Amy's father confirmed that he had the $100,000 ready to go, neatly bundled and waiting for delivery. But the caller said it was too late that night. He wanted the money dropped off over 320 kilometers away, at a gas station. That distance made it impossible to arrive before daylight, and the kidnapper feared being seen. Mr. McNeal tried to press him. "I can't wait until tomorrow," he insisted. But the kidnapper hung up, promising to call again the next day. Once again, the call had been too brief to trace. Frustration was growing. The investigators could only hope Amy would survive the night. Saturday, January 12, 1985, 5 p.m. It had been roughly a day and a half since Amy's abduction. Despite multiple calls and a ransom demand of $100,000 in unmarked bills, the kidnappers still hadn't provided a place for the exchange. The FBI, Johnson County Sheriff's Department, and a dozen Texas Rangers were working around the clock. Tensions were running high. The kidnappers had warned the McNeal family not to involve the authorities, but the family made the brave decision to do so anyway, a choice that likely saved Amy's life. The agents were on edge, waiting for the promised 5 p.m. phone call. They expected the caller to finally reveal the drop-off location and confirm that Amy was still alive. Meanwhile, Special Agent Clint Brown and his team had already developed a detailed plan. Mr. McNeal would deliver the ransom personally. From the outside, it would look like he was driving alone, but in reality, 2 FBI agents would be hidden inside his vehicle, heavily armed and ready to act if anything went wrong. They outfitted the car with discreet recording equipment to capture any conversations during the drop-off. Audio recorders and concealed microphones were placed strategically. The agents double-checked everything: weapons, radios, backup teams. They were prepared for any possible outcome. At exactly 5:10 p.m., the phone rang again. The voice was the same, calm, cold, and in control. The kidnapper instructed Mr. McNeal to drive nearly 65 kilometers east on Interstate 30 toward Dallas. He told him to exit at marker 51, where he'd find a gas station. There, at a payphone beside the ice machine, he would receive his next set of directions. He was to be there by 7 p.m. sharp. Before hanging up, the man allowed Mr. McNeal to briefly speak with Amy. Her voice, though weak, confirmed she was alive and unharmed for now. The call ended too quickly to trace. A convoy was immediately mobilized. Deputies and Texas Rangers followed the ransom vehicle from a safe distance, not wanting to tip off the kidnappers. Everyone involved knew this was a delicate mission. One wrong move could put Amy in serious danger. Texas Ranger Bill Gunn recalled the pressure. "We had every tool in our arsenal: tracking devices, aerial surveillance. We even mounted a transmitter on McNeal's car, just in case we lost visual contact. Ground and air teams were ready to follow." Mr. McNeal, wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a concealed handgun for protection, promised his wife he would bring Amy home safely. Hidden in his vehicle were FBI agents armed with shotguns and semi-automatic pistols. The moment he got the green light, he hit the road, heading toward the rendezvous point. Only after he had driven a good distance did the follow-up team pull out to maintain a discreet distance. The agents worried the kidnappers might be watching the road, or even tailing Mr. McNeal. No one knew where they were, or how far they'd go to avoid getting caught. The drive extended beyond Johnson County limits, so coordination with nearby jurisdictions was necessary. The convoy relayed vehicle descriptions and license plate numbers to ensure smooth passage without unnecessary delays. By the time Mr. McNeal's car reached exit 51, a network of law enforcement officers had already taken positions around the gas station. Some were outside, keeping watch from a distance, while others monitored the site up close. At exactly 7 p.m., the payphone started to ring. It was the 8th call from the kidnappers in just 34 hours. But instead of giving up Amy's location, the man on the line gave yet another set of instructions. Mr. McNeal was to continue east on Interstate 20 for another 160 kilometers. There, near the exit to U.S. Route 69 in Tyler, Texas, was another gas station. At 9:20 p.m., he was to wait at the payphone for further contact. Special Agent Kickletter, who was riding with Mr. McNeal, found the constant changes deeply suspicious. It felt like they didn't know what they were doing, he said. They seemed confused, like they were making it up as they went. They definitely weren't professional criminals. But that didn't make them any less dangerous. At the Tyler gas station, Mr. McNeal received another call. This time, he was told to drive more than 60 kilometers further east to a gas station in Longview, and from there, he'd need to continue another 100 kilometers north, toward a town called Mount Pleasant. The final call, they said, would come at midnight. By now, the agents had been on the road for hours, covering hundreds of kilometers across rural Texas. The two surveillance planes providing aerial coverage were running low on fuel and had to return to Dallas to refuel. The team was tired, but no one was giving up. "We had no idea what they were planning next," said one agent. "They were leading us in circles across Texas, and we didn't know when or if the ride would end, but we weren't going to quit." Then things took a turn for the worse. Midway to Mount Pleasant, Mr. McNeal's vehicle suddenly stalled. After hours of driving at high speeds, the engine gave out, the lights dimmed, and the radio cut off. The electrical system had failed. The team inside panicked. Special Agent Kickletter feared the worst. "I thought we were out of time," he admitted. "If we make it to that gas station by midnight, we might never see Amy again." It was now January 13th, 1985, and time was slipping away. Mr. McNeal, along with two FBI agents, was stuck just outside Mount Pleasant, Texas. Their car had broken down just before reaching the designated location, the site where the next call from the kidnappers was expected. As the three men worked frantically to restart the vehicle, two Texas Rangers watched helplessly from their concealed position at the gas station. The public phone next to them began to ring, the call they had waited all night for, but the man meant to answer. It was nowhere in sight. Back on the roadside, the FBI agents discovered the issue. The car's alternator had failed, draining the battery completely after hours of powering radios, surveillance equipment, and recording devices. The electronics were dead, and so were the headlights. Fortunately, by disconnecting some of the equipment, they were able to restore just enough power to restart the engine. Though the car now had no lights and limited electrical function, it was moving again. They pressed on cautiously through the dark, relying on guidance from one of the surveillance planes, which now had to serve a new purpose, lighting the road ahead for the barely functioning vehicle. Meanwhile, the rest of the team regrouped a short distance from the gas station, hoping for another chance to intercept the kidnappers. Despite missing the midnight call, they weren't ready to give up. Their instincts told them the kidnappers would try again. They wanted that money. Sure enough, at 1:15 a.m., the phone rang once more. One of the abductors was on the line. He insisted that Amy was still alive, but again refused to let her speak. Instead, he demanded that the ransom be delivered to a nearby motel in Mount Pleasant. When Mr. McNeal explained that his car had broken down and he was stuck, the caller responded coldly, "Fine, we'll come get the money, but we're armed, don't have any cops around." Despite the chilling warning, Mr. McNeal prepared for the handoff. He took the money and walked out to the front of the gas station, making himself visible. He was exposed and vulnerable, but he didn't flinch. Nearby, agents in the car readied themselves for a possible shootout. Special Agent Kickletter knew this was one of the riskiest parts of any kidnapping case. "Ransom drops are dangerous," he said. "We always worry someone could get hurt or worse, that the kidnappers might grab more hostages." The cold night dragged on. No cars approached. The Rangers remained hidden, scanning every movement around the station. By 3 a.m., 2 hours had passed since the last call. There was still no sign of the kidnappers. After weighing their options, law enforcement made a tough call. They decided to stand down and try again in the morning. But Mr. McNeal didn't want to leave. He had followed every instruction to the letter. Now, when he was finally this close, he was told to retreat. He was devastated. Still, the agents convinced him it was the safest move for now. As the team regrouped at another staging area a short distance away, two Rangers who had been staked out in a nearby Fields started to make their way back toward the road. That's when something unexpected happened. A car rolled past them, not speeding, just cruising, but something about it caught their attention. Inside were several men and a young girl. She looked frightened. The Rangers didn't wait. They radioed for backup, suspecting this was a vehicle carrying Amy McNeal. It was now 3:45 a.m. on January 13th, 1985. Two Texas Rangers had just spotted what they believed was a kidnapper's car, and Amy McNeal was likely inside. The vehicle was heading toward Interstate 30, picking up speed. Within moments, it was racing down the highway, and law enforcement was in hot pursuit. Sheriff Eddie Box happened to be nearby and heard the call go out over the radio. He caught sight of the car, but quickly realized his own vehicle, a delivery van, was no match for the speeding suspects. "They absolutely left me in the dust," the sheriff later recalled. "I couldn't even keep them in my line of sight. They were flying at over 100 miles an hour. As his chase ended, other law enforcement units picked it up. The suspects were barreling westbound on Interstate 30 toward Dallas, and every available agency was mobilizing to intercept them. A surveillance aircraft spotted the car from above, helping direct ground units during the high-speed chase. The pursuit now stretched across 3 counties. FBI agents, Texas Rangers, and deputies were all closing in, but the suspects didn't slow down. They were desperate. When the lead Ranger vehicle finally pulled close, the kidnappers opened fire. Bullets from a shotgun and a handgun ripped through the police cruiser. As the Ranger prepared to return fire, he saw something that made him freeze. There were 2 girls visible in the back seat of the suspect's car. One of them was Amy. The kidnappers had placed the girls near the rear window, using them as human shields. The officers couldn't shoot, not without risking the very life they were trying to save. The chase continued. A construction zone narrowed the highway to a single lane, and the lead Ranger's car was hit again, this time in the carburetor. The vehicle slowed, and the suspect sped off once more. The pursuit covered miles before the kidnappers suddenly veered off at an exit near Saltillo, Texas, and came to a stop in front of a house. Multiple individuals jumped out and scattered. Some ran toward a delivery van parked in the driveway. Others dashed behind the house. Gunfire erupted once again. None of the officers at the scene had bulletproof vests, a frightening reality as the suspects fired from behind cover. Ranger John Dandy was among the first to return fire. "I saw one of them near the driver's seat, and I took my shot," he said. "My goal was simple: stop him before anyone else got hurt." Meanwhile, just a few kilometers away, Mr. McNeal was still en route with an FBI agent and the sheriff. They had been racing to the location since the chase began, praying the gunfire wouldn't claim their daughter. At the scene, the firefight raged on. One brave deputy made a run for the suspect's car and managed to reach it. He peered inside and saw Amy. She looked at him, terrified, and asked if he was a police officer. "Yes," he told her. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him. The deputy pulled her out of the car and handed her off to another ranger, who sprinted with her to safety, away from the line of fire. After 44 harrowing hours, 13-year-old Amy McNeal was finally safe. The radio crackled with the news. "Amy is secure." Back in the car, Special Agent Kickleter was overwhelmed. "We just waited, and then we finally got the word," he said. Mr. McNeal reached over and clapped me on the shoulder. He was so relieved. We all were. The gunfire came to a halt, but the standoff wasn't over. 2 of the kidnappers had been wounded, yet law enforcement kept their weapons drawn, unsure if more bullets were coming. Suddenly, a 3rd suspect emerged from the shadows. Officers shouted commands. "Don't move! On your knees!" "Drop the weapon." Realizing there was no escape, he gave up and surrendered. Inside the vehicle, agents also apprehended a young woman and a 4th man who had remained seated during the entire firefight. The officers quickly confirmed. All of Amy's captors were now in custody. Not far from the scene, Amy spotted a familiar vehicle, the one carrying her father. She broke into a run, rushing straight into his arms. It was an emotional reunion, one that brought tears to everyone nearby. Special Agent Clint Brown, a father himself, witnessed the moment. "That reunion hit hard," he said. We were all dads out there. Watching them hug, it was a win for every one of us. Thankfully, aside from the suspects, no one else was injured in the gunfight. The elderly woman who lived in the house near the scene had gone unharmed, though she was badly shaken by the sudden chaos just meters from her bed. A background check revealed that the kidnappers' vehicle had been stolen in Dallas the day before the abduction. Investigators also discovered that the reason the car had stopped in Saltillo was simple. They'd run out of gas. The ringleader, 34-year-old James Flood, had previously worked for Mr. McNeal. It was during that time he hatched the plan to kidnap Amy. He was later convicted on multiple charges, including kidnapping, attempted murder, and use of a firearm during a crime, earning him a life sentence. Michael Mills, 27, who had made several of the ransom calls, also received a life sentence for kidnapping and attempted murder. The other two men, 21-year-olds Daniel Necker and Thomas Barnes, were likewise sentenced to life in prison for their roles in the crime. The young woman who had been found with them, just 18 years old, faced similar charges. However, Amy later confirmed that the woman had tried to protect her during captivity. The woman claimed she hadn't known what she was getting into when she joined the group, which had already been on a meth-fueled binge for days. Because of that, her sentence was reduced. She received 10 years probation. Months later, on July 4th, 1985, James Flood was transferred from the state penitentiary to the Johnson County Jail to face additional charges. Investigators discovered that the same weapons used in Amy's kidnapping had also been involved in a prior armed robbery in Dallas. In fact, there was another warrant out for Flood. He had tried to kidnap the child of a wealthy contractor just days before abducting Amy. Then, something alarming happened. While a guard stepped away momentarily to fetch a water hose to help cool inmates during the summer heat, Flood made his move. He scaled a 2.5-meter fence topped with barbed wire and disappeared into the woods. That evening, the sheriff had to deliver the unthinkable news to the McNeal family. The man who kidnapped their daughter had escaped. To protect them, officers were stationed outside the McNeal home. Mr. McNeal even offered a reward for any information leading to Flood's capture. A few days later, the sheriff got a promising call. A man from Paris, Texas, who happened to be Flood's cousin, said he knew where the fugitive was hiding. Wanting to cut a deal with the authorities due to his own legal troubles, the cousin cooperated. Deputies quickly mobilized. Over 270 kilometers away, they surrounded a small one-story house. The cousin had arranged for Flood to be inside at a specific time. This time, there would be no gunfire. Police burst in, shouting commands. "Police, don't move. Hands up." Flood didn't resist. He was arrested on the spot and taken back into custody, where he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. In recognition of their heroic efforts, Ranger John Dandy and others involved in Amy's rescue were awarded commendations by the governor of Texas. Reflecting on the case, Dandy said it best: "Helping bring that little girl home safe. That's what it's all about. That moment alone made my entire career worth it." Thanks to the swift action and relentless dedication of everyone involved, 13-year-old Amy McNeal was reunited with her family, unharmed and alive.